All right, hopefully the installation went okay. I know it can be tricky. If it didn't, make sure you leave a comment, reach out for some help so you can get it resolved ASAP. Now that we have it installed, it's super easy to make a new app. All we do is type create React app, space, the name of our application folder, the name of the app we want to create. So it's going to make a folder for us with that name, and inside of it, it's going to put a whole bunch of stuff. So just make sure, you're not doing this inside of another React application. Make sure you're not inside of some folder where you don't want to create a whole bunch of other stuff. And also make sure that you have quit your terminal and reopened it, or at least opened a new window since you installed it, just to make sure everything took effect. So I'm going to go to my terminal. I'm in an empty folder here. Let's see if this is large enough. Okay, so there's nothing in here. What I'm going to do is run create-react app. You can use tab to autocomplete, and then give it a name. And let's do our first app. And you don't have to do this kebab case. You don't have to do lowercase letters, but most of the apps that I see are named that way, and the documentation does it as well. It's pretty standard across Node. And this is going to take a little bit. Even though everything is installed as far as create React app is concerned, every time you make a new application, it's going to install a bunch of dependencies, and those dependencies have their own set of dependencies. So at the end of the day, there's something like 1,700 something packages that have to be installed just to make one create React app application, one starter sort of skeleton. I'm going to fast forward through this, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, there we go. And I was off. It's 1,991 packages. Okay, so if we take a look around in here, we now have this new folder, our first app, or whatever you named yours. So I'm going to CD inside of it. The first thing I'll do after this is open it up in my text editor, VS Code. So let's do that now. So the easiest way, if you don't have an alias set up in your command line, is just to go into VS Code and click Open Folder. Then you navigate to the folder, and we want to open the entire folder. So not just a single file, we want the whole thing. And I'm going to open it, and you'll see there's a bunch of stuff here. Let's just take a look at the package.json to start, or actually the README. That's a good place. So this gives you all of the commands, the scripts that you can run, and we'll come back to these in the next video when we actually start up our server and play around with it. But I just want to give you a quick tour of what all we have here. So there's the node modules folder, first of all, which you pretty much never touch yourself. But inside of here are all of the dependencies that have been installed. There's tons of them, right? So these all do different things, but we need them all. So don't touch that at all. Then we have the public folder, which has just a couple of files, an index.html, which this actually is the starting point of your application. This is where your app will go. This should look familiar. Div ID equal to root. But on its own, it's very plain. There's not much in here at all. And it's pretty rare that you go and touch any of these files. It's not unheard of that you touch these files, but you just aren't usually doing it. Then there's the source folder, SRC. And this is where we spend the bulk of our time working. All the components we make go in here. So you can see there's CSS files, there's JavaScript files, there's test files for our JavaScript. We've got a service worker, there's a logo, index.js. There's a git ignore, which we don't really have to care about right now, but this just ignores. If you don't work with Git, then don't worry about it. But by default, folders like node modules are going to be ignored so that you're not uploading that entire folder to GitHub. We also have our package.json, where we'll go and add in, potentially dependencies down the line. If we're including other libraries we want, maybe Axios to make requests, maybe Faker.js to get some fake data, maybe a database connection, maybe a Bootstrap or Semantic UI package, we could install them and they would show up in here. So back on the slides, there's a nice little diagram that kind of explains the basic skeleton. So just to quickly run through it again, we have the README file. You can get rid of it if you want to, or usually you should just replace it with your own and put in the important information for someone else who is looking at your own README for your application. Then we've got package.json, which you can edit like a normal Node app. Package lock, don't touch that. Inside of public, we've got our index.html, the main start point of our site where the root div is, and then the source folder where all of the magic happens. This is where we create our components. We add files into here for each component. As you can see, there's already an app component by default. We didn't do any of that. And in the next video, you'll see when we start the server up, we actually see some sort of good looking stuff rendered right away. So we're going to delete all of it, but there's already a React app up and running with a component being rendered. Okay, so in the next video, we'll see how to actually start and stop it. We'll talk about Webpack, the live server, a whole bunch of stuff.